India's luxury airline Vistara flies into the sunset. Indian full-service carrier Vistara will operate its last flight on Monday after 9 years in existence. A joint venture between Singapore Airlines and the Tata Sons, Vistara will merge with Tata-owned Air India to form a single entity with an expanded network and broader fleet. This means that all Vistara operations will be transferred to and managed by Air India, including help desk kiosks and ticketing offices. The process of migrating passengers with existing Vistara bookings and loyalty programs to Air India has been underway over the past few months. As part of the merger process, meals, serviceware, and other soft elements have been upgraded and incorporates aspects of both Vistara and Air India, an Air India spokesperson said in an email response. Amid concerns that the merger could impact service standards, the Tatas have assured that Vistara's in-flight experience will remain unchanged. Known for its high ratings in food, service, and cabin quality, Vistara has built a loyal customer base, and the decision to retire the Vistara brand has been criticized by fans, branding experts, and aviation analysts. The consolidation was effectively done to clean up Vistara's books and wipe out its losses, said Mark Martin, an aviation analyst. Air India has essentially been suckered into taking a loss-making airline in a desperate move, he added. Mergers are meant to make airlines powerful, never to wipe out losses or cover them. To be sure, both Air India and Vistara's annual losses have reduced by more than half over the past year, and other operating metrics have improved too. But the merger process so far has been turbulent. The exercise has been riddled with problems. From pilot shortages that have led to massive flight cancellations, to Vistara crew going on mass sick leave over plans to align their salary structures with Air India. There have also been repeated complaints about poor service standards on Air India, including viral videos of broken seats and non-functioning in-flight entertainment systems. The Tatas have announced a $400 million, 308 pounds program to upgrade and retrofit the interiors of its older aircraft and also a brand new livery. They've also placed orders for hundreds of new Airbus and Boeing planes worth billions of dollars to augment their offering. But this turnaround is still incomplete and riddled with problems, according to Mr. Martin. A merger only complicates matters. Experts say that the merger strikes a dissonant chord from a branding perspective, too. Harish Bijur, a brand strategy specialist, told the BBC he was feeling emotional that a superior product offering like Vistara, which had developed a gold standard for Indian aviation, was ceasing operations. It is a big loss for the industry, said Mr. Bijur, adding it will be a monumental task for the mother brand Air India to simply copy, paste, and exceed the high standards set by Vistara, given that it's a much smaller airline that's being gobbled up by a much larger one. Mr. Bijur suggests a better strategy would have been to operate Air India separately for 5 years, focusing on improving service standards, while maintaining Vistara as a distinct brand with Air India prefixed to it. This would have given Air India the time and chance to rectify the mother brand and bring it up to the Vistara level, while maintaining its uniqueness, he adds. Beyond branding, the merged entity will face a slew of operational challenges. Communication will be a major challenge in the early days, with customers arriving at the airport expecting Vistara flights, only to find Air India branding, says Ajay Autani, editor of Live from a Lounge, an aviation portal. Air India will need to maintain clear communication for weeks. Another key challenge, he notes, is cultural. Vistara's agile employees may struggle to adjust to Air India's complex bureaucracy and systems, but the biggest task for the merged carrier would be offering customers a uniform flying experience. These are 2 airlines with very different service formats are being integrated into one airline. It is going to be a hodgepodge of service formats, cabin formats, branding, and customer experience. It will involve learning and unlearning, and such a process has rarely worked with airlines and is seldom effective, said Mr. Martin. Still, many believe Vistara had to go, now or some years later. A legacy brand like Air India, with strong global recognition and India imprinted in its identity, wouldn't have allowed a smaller, more premium subsidiary to overshadow its revival process. Financially, too, it makes little sense for the Tatas to have 2 loss-making entities compete with one another. The combined strength of Vistara and Air India could also place the Tatas in a much better position to compete with market leader Indigo. The unified Air India group, including Air India Express, which completed its merger with the former Air Asia India in October, will be bigger and better with a fleet size of nearly 300 aircraft, an expanded network, and a stronger workforce, an Air India spokesperson said. Getting done with the merger means that Air India grows overnight and the two teams start cooperating instead of competing. There will never be one right day to merge. Somewhere a line had to be drawn, said Mr. Autonay. But for many Vistara loyalists, its demise leaves a void in India's skies for a premium, full-service carrier, marking the third such gap after the collapse of Kingfisher Airlines and Jet Airways. It's still too early to say if Air India, which often ranks at the bottom of airline surveys, can successfully fill that void.
New study on moons of Uranus raises chance of life. The planet Uranus and its 5 biggest moons may not be the dead sterile worlds that scientists have long thought. Instead, they may have oceans, and the moons may even be capable of supporting life, scientists say. Much of what we know about them was gathered by NASA's Voyager 2 spacecraft, which visited nearly 40 years ago. But a new analysis shows that Voyager's visit coincided with a powerful solar storm, which led to a misleading idea of what the Uranian system is really like. Uranus is a beautiful, icy ringed world in the outer reaches of our solar system. It is among the coldest of all the planets. It is also tilted on its side compared to all the other worlds, as if it had been knocked over, making it arguably the weirdest. We got our first close-up look at it in 1986, when Voyager 2 flew past and sent back sensational pictures of the planet and its 5 major moons. But what amazed scientists even more was the data Voyager 2 sent back indicating that the Uranian system was even weirder than they thought. The measurements from the spacecraft's instruments indicated that the planets and moons were inactive, unlike the other moons in the outer solar system. They also showed that Uranus's protective magnetic field was strangely distorted. It was squashed and pushed away from the Sun. A planet's magnetic field traps any gases and other material coming off the planet and its moons. These might be from oceans or geological activity. Voyager 2 found none, suggesting that Uranus and its 5 largest moons were sterile and inactive. This came as an enormous surprise because it was unlike the solar system's other planets and their moons, but the new analysis has solved the decades-long mystery. It shows that Voyager 2 flew past on a bad day. The new research shows that just as Voyager 2 flew past Uranus, the Sun was raging, creating a powerful solar wind that might have blown the material away and temporarily distorted the magnetic field. So, for 40 years we have had an incorrect view of what Uranus and its 5 largest moons are normally like, according to Dr. William Dunn of University College London. These results suggest that the Uranian system could be much more exciting than previously thought. There could be moons there that could have the conditions that are necessary for life. They might have oceans that below the surface that could be teeming with fish. Linda Spilker was a young scientist working on the Voyager program when the Uranus data came in. She is now still serving as the project scientist for the Voyager missions. She said that she was delighted to hear about the new results, which have been published in the journal Nature Astronomy. The results are fascinating, and I am really excited to see that there is potential for life in the Uranian system, she told BBC News. I'm also so pleased that so much is being done with the Voyager data. It's amazing that scientists are looking back at the data we collected in 1986 and finding new results and new discoveries. Dr. Afelia Wibisono of the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, who is independent of the research team, described the results as very exciting. It shows how important it is to look back at old data, because sometimes, hiding behind them is something new to be discovered, which can help us design the next generation of space exploration missions. Which is exactly what NASA is doing, partly as a result of the new research. It has been nearly 40 years since Voyager 2 last flew past the icy world and its moons. NASA has plans to launch a new mission, the Uranus Orbiter and Probe, to go back for a closer look in 10 years' time. According to NASA's Dr. Jamie Jasinski, whose idea it was to re-examine the Voyager 2 data, the mission will need to take his results into account when designing its instruments and planning the scientific survey. Some of the instruments for the future spacecraft are very much being designed with ideas from what we learned from Voyager 2 when it flew past the system when it was experiencing an abnormal event. So we need to rethink how exactly we are going to design the instruments on the new mission so that we can best capture the science we need to make discoveries. NASA's Uranus probe is expected to arrive by 2045, which is when scientists hope to find out whether these far-flung icy moons, once thought of as being dead worlds, might have the possibility of being home to life.
Gladiator 2 Review. By far the best popcorn film of the year, Paul Mescal is the mesmerizing center of Ridley Scott's long-awaited Gladiator sequel, which balances emotional drama and social themes with all-out action spectacle. How can you not love a film that has swords, sandals, sharks in the flooded Roman Colosseum, Denzel Washington in flowing robes and Paul Mescal biting a baboon? There's much more than that, both serious and camp, in Ridley Scott's exhilarating and fun sequel to Gladiator, which won the Oscar for Best Picture nearly a quarter of a century ago. Full of spectacle and spectacular performances, Gladiator 2 is by far the best popcorn film of the year. Mescal, a counterintuitive choice given his sensitive roles in Normal People and After Sun, is the mesmerizing center of the film, holding it together with the same power and magnetism Russell Crowe brought to the original. The sequel has a less perfect balance between emotion and action than the first, with beheadings and swordfights almost overwhelming the characters, but it comes close enough. Those comparisons aren't gratuitous, because Gladiator 2 is full of echoes of the original, in which Crowe's Gladiator, Maximus, and the vile Caesar, Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix, battled to the death in the Colosseum. Lucius, Maximus's son with Commodus' sister, Lucilla, Connie Nielsen, returning to that role here, was then a small boy sent away from Rome for his own safety. 15 years later, here he is played by Mescal, more sinewy than usual but thankfully not pumped up to the cartoonish proportions of a Marvel character. Lucius has grown into manhood in Numidia in northern Africa, and soon plunges into war against the Roman invaders. Scott is in total command of the action scenes, and makes that point with an extravagant opening battle. Numidians catapult balls of fire toward the approaching Roman ships, Roman arrows fly toward the Numidian battlements, Lucius's warrior wife is killed, and he is captured and sent toward Rome, vowing revenge against the empire's general Acacius, Pedro Pascal. The Rome he returns to is more colorful and sinister than ever. Now there are two decadent emperors, twins ruling jointly without regard for the populace, creepy visions in pasty white face makeup and heavy eyeliner. Joseph Quinn is especially chilling, quietly intense and fearsome as Geta, the smarter and therefore more dangerous of the two. Fred Heckinger is the wild-eyed, out-of-control Caracalla, the Fredo to Geta's Michael Corleone. Washington plays the enigmatic Macrinus, a wealthy businessman and owner of gladiators who buys Lucius. With jeweled rings on every finger and gold chains around his neck, Washington approaches the role with absolute gusto and over-the-top delivery as Macrinus schemes for power. But at times he pulls the performance back enough to reveal the canniness beneath that brash persona. Pascal's fans may be disappointed in his relatively smaller role and subdued performance. He doesn't make much of an impact, even though it turns out Acacius is married to Lucilla and shares her desire to depose the demented, bloodthirsty emperors. In the big action arena scenes, Scott pulls out all the stops. A Roman enters riding a rhino. The editing is kinetic as tigers and baboons are unleashed against Lucius and the other gladiators, who are called barbarians. Lucius is so fierce he chomps on a baboon's furry arm. At close range those baboons are conspicuously fake, a weak spot in special effects that are generally smooth. Some distant backgrounds also look flatly CGI'd, but Scott stages the action with enough volatility to overcome those small glitches. Where his recent Napoleon, 2023, was big and sluggish, and House of Gucci, 2021, a ludicrous mess, Gladiator 2 has the masterful pacing of Scott's best films, including the classics Alien, 1979, and Blade Runner, 1982. In the smaller-scale episodes, Scott knows when to give Mescal the close-ups that allow him to shine, exuding Lucius's determination and anger. That is especially true in his defiant conversations with Macrinus, who does not yet know that Lucius is the heir to the empire, but wonders why this gladiator can quote Virgil. Mescal's intelligent performance raises the level of the film beyond its violent combat. And some of the violence is emotional. Most viewers will know going in, as the film's trailer reveals, that Lucius is Maximus's son, so we are way ahead of most characters. But one of the most bracing episodes takes place when Lucilla recognizes the gladiator as her son and visits him in his jail-like cell, a meeting that defies our easy expectations. As the film heads toward its ultimate battles, the camp level rises. There is a scene with Macrinus, the Roman Senate and a severed head, no spoilers, it's not Washington's head, that is just silly. At times Washington and the Emperor twins seem to be in a little campfest all their own, but instead of pulling against the rest of the film, that style lands as another sign that Gladiator 2 is meant to be an entertaining romp. Under its crowd-pleasing surface, though, the film's theme of political power, of who wields it and how, is strong and purposeful, even if Scott K.L.P weaves it into the colorful show. Asked by the New York Times if he saw a connection between his Roman Empire and the political world today, Scott bluntly answered, "Yeah. If we don't watch it, we're getting worse," adding, "I try and keep that in the forefront in the film," pointing to some of Lucius's questions about what Rome values. "Is this how Rome treats its heroes?" Lucius yells from the arena when one of them is killed. That social theme was evident in the first Gladiator, where the civic-minded Senator Gracchus, Derek Jacobi, who returns briefly in the sequel, warns against underestimating the shallowness of the mob, easily placated with bread and circuses. "He will bring them death and they will love him for it," he says of Commodus, who offers no more than the distraction of the games. In Gladiator 2, Lucilla says, "The people are weary of the madness, the tyranny." Which of them is right is the sequel's open question, as Lucius talks about his grandfather's dream of a Roman Republic and asks the citizens, "Dare we rebuild the dream together?" If we're lucky, Scott may have an answer. He told The Hollywood Reporter that he has an idea for Gladiator 3 inspired by The Godfather 2. From his lips to the Roman god's ears.
Week 10 of the NFL season kicked off Thursday with the Baltimore Ravens defeating the Cincinnati Bengals 35-34. Then in Munich, the Carolina Panthers prevailed over the New York Giants 20-17 for an early start to Sunday football. The Denver Broncos' upset bid fell short against the Kansas City Chiefs, who moved to 9-0. San Francisco 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey made his season debut against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the New Orleans Saints got back on track after firing Coach Dennis Allen last week with a win over the Atlanta Falcons. Later Sunday, the Arizona Cardinals and Philadelphia Eagles blew out the New York Jets and Dallas Cowboys, respectively. Our NFL Nation reporters reacted to all the action, answering lingering questions coming out of each game and detailing everything else you need to know for every team. Let's get to it. Is there reason for concern after Jared Goff's 5 INT performance? It was a rough night at the office for Goff with a career-high 5 interceptions. Entering the game, Goff had 4 interceptions on the season and hadn't thrown one since week 3, while attempting 114 passes between picks. Against Houston, though, Goff faced heavy pressure, particularly in the first half. Although Goff struggled, he shouldn't have any issue with getting back on track next week at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Most surprising performance, Jake Bates. In a return to his home state, the Lions kicker nailed a game-winning 52-yard field goal in dramatic fashion. Bates also had a 58-yard field goal to tie the score with 5:01 remaining. The last kicker to make 2 50-plus-yard field goals in the final 6 minutes of regulation was Matthew Wright in 2021 for the Jaguars. Early prediction for next week. Lions WR Amon-Ra St. Brown will score a receiving touchdown for the 8th consecutive game. With a fourth-quarter touchdown against the Texans, St. Brown established a franchise mark at 7 consecutive games with a receiving TD. He broke a tie with Leon Hart 1951, Herman Moore 1994, and himself 2021-22. Can the Texans fix their second-half lulls? Coming into Sunday Night Football, the Texans' offense averaged 9.1 points in the second half, but this was a new low, scoring a season-worst 0 points against the Lions. The Texans' inability to score fueled the Lions' comeback, even though the defense forced 5 interceptions. The Texans' second-half possessions, interception, punt, 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 and missed field goal. That's a recipe for a loss. Instead of being 7-4 with a win over one of the best teams in the NFC, they're losers in 3 of their past 4 games. Describe the game in 2 words: interception overload. There were 7 interceptions between both teams, the most in a game since 2018. The Texans' defense forced Goff into the most picks in a primetime game since former Saints QB Drew Brees had the same total in 2012 against the Falcons. Most surprising performance, CB Kamari Lassiter had 2 interceptions, bumping his season total to 3. As a rookie, he's holding opposing quarterbacks to a 62 passer rating and a 42.5% completion percentage when targeted. Is it time to start looking at the Eagles as a legit title contender? Not quite yet, but they're building a compelling case after winning 5 straight. The only knock is all of those wins came against teams with sub-.500 records. Philadelphia has several quality opponents coming up, including the Commanders at home Thursday night in a game that could help the Eagles take command of the NFC East. Let's see how they do in this upcoming stretch before elevating them to Super Bowl contenders, but they are emitting positive signs. Describe the game in 2 words: defensive dominance. The Eagles held overmatched quarterback Cooper Rush to 45 passing yards before he was replaced by Trey Lance. The defense generated 5 takeaways, 4 of which were fumble recoveries. Linebacker Zach Bond impressed, leading the team in tackles 8 and forcing a key red zone fumble. This unit is playing above preseason expectations. Eye-popping stat: quarterback Jalen Hurts was pressured on 13 of 21 first-half dropbacks, 62%, the highest rate he has faced in a half during his career, minimum 5 dropbacks. He completed 5 of 6 passes for 101 yards and a touchdown to go with 5 sacks and a fumble on those plays. He elevated his play in the second half and finished with 4 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 2 rushing. Will it get worse for the Cowboys? Where are the winnable games on the schedule? Thanksgiving against the Giants? Potentially. December 15th at the Panthers? But Carolina has won 2 straight. The other 6 remaining games are against teams in the playoff hunt or not far out, Cincinnati. Sunday's loss marked the 5th straight home game the Cowboys have trailed by 20 or more points, including the playoffs. That is an NFL record and speaks to how the season has gone. Biggest hole in the game plan: not blocking the sun coming through the windows at AT&T Stadium. On 2nd and goal in the second quarter, Rush threw to wide receiver CeeDee Lamb in the end zone, but he never saw the pass, pointing to his face mask to indicate he could not see the ball because of the sun. Instead of a touchdown and a lead, the Cowboys settled for a field goal. After that, the Eagles scored 27 unanswered points. Most surprising performance. Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, but after a 4-game absence because of a high left ankle sprain, Micah Parsons recorded 2 sacks. It was his first 2-sack game of the 2024 season, in his 5th game. The sacks were the 4th and 5th Parsons has had against Hurts, which is his most against any quarterback. How does this home stretch set up the Cardinals heading into their bye? The biggest question surrounding the Cardinals right now: when will they lose again? They're playing the best football under coach Jonathan Gannon, with a 6-4 record after winning their 4th straight and 5th in the past 6 games. The Cardinals return from their bye to face the Seahawks, Vikings, and Seahawks again. They finished the season with the Patriots, Panthers, Rams, and 49ers. Describe the game in 2 words: total domination. The Cardinals took it to the Jets. Quarterback Kyler Murray threw for 266 yards and a touchdown while 3 receivers had at least 50 yards. That's on top of Arizona running for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns, including 2 from Murray. Then there was the defense, which had 3 sacks and 5 quarterback hurries. Eye-popping stat: Murray made 17 consecutive completions, the franchise's longest such streak since 1978, before he was taken out of the game late in the 4th quarter. The odds of him completing each of his past 17 passes based on the probability for each attempt was 0.2453%, 1 in 408, according to NFL Next Gen Stats. Is it time to write the obituary for the 2024 Jets? Oh, yes. At 3-7, they're done. Forget about a miracle turnaround. They will be remembered as an overrated team, flawed in many areas, lacking the mental toughness to withstand adversity. From quarterback Aaron Rodgers to the bottom of the roster, the Jets underachieved. Owner Woody Johnson's decision to fire coach Robert Saleh after 5 games backfired, and a midseason trade for receiver Devontae Adams has been a bust. Interim coach Jeff Ulbrich fell to 1-4 as the defense, his pride and joy, played its worst game with everything at stake. Biggest hole in the game plan: the defense was a total no-show. The coverage was poor, and the tackling was worse. The Jets allowed touchdown drives of 70, and 88 yards before forcing a punt. They were ill-prepared and lacked energy at times. Edge rusher Hasten Reddick was invisible, and star cornerback Sauce Gardner missed a critical tackle that led to a hurdle from tight end Trey McBride. Eye-popping stat: Rodgers completed 1 pass that traveled at least 10 air yards per NFL Next Gen Stats. You're talking about a future Hall of Fame quarterback, throwing to Adams and Garrett Wilson. And the Cardinals were ranked 24th in pass defense. utterly mind-boggling. Are the Chargers legitimate playoff contenders? After Sunday's win over the Titans, the Chargers 6-3 have eclipsed their win total from last season and have one of the NFL's best defenses. Still, Los Angeles has beaten only one playoff team from last season, the struggling Browns. The final 8 games of the season, where it faces Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Kansas City, should prove whether this team is legitimate. Most surprising performance, quarterback Justin Herbert scrambling. Herbert ran 7 times for 32 yards and a touchdown. He set the Chargers record for the most career rushing yards, 1,028, by a quarterback. His 8-yard scramble in the fourth quarter, where he pump-faked and made cornerback Roger McCreary fall, drew joyous celebration from the sideline. Describe the game in 2 words: defensive depth. The Chargers had 7 sacks, with all-pro edge rushers Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa playing 22 snaps combined. They also allowed 17 points while missing both starting cornerbacks, as 5th-round rookies Cam Hart and Tarheeb still started at outside corner. Will the Titans win another game this season? 4 of the 8 remaining games for the 2-7 Titans are against teams with winning records, and they aren't favored in any of them, according to ESPN's matchup predictors. The best chance for the Titans to get another victory will be against the Jaguars in weeks 14 and 17. On Sunday, they continue to have breakdowns in all 3 phases of the game. The special teams unit gave up a 56-yard return after they pulled within 3 points in the third quarter. The offense struggled to score, and the defense got worn down. This is a common formula for Tennessee. Biggest hole in the game plan: right tackle continues to be a problem. Leroy Watson 4 and John Ojukwu rotated, and the results weren't good. Watson was penalized 3 times. The 2 of them cost the team 20 yards on a drive that ended with a missed 49-yard field goal. Ojukwu also gave up a sack. Describe the game in 2 words: ball control. The Titans couldn't stop the Chargers from maintaining possession, starting with the opening drive when Los Angeles drove 68 yards over 6 minutes and 52 seconds. The Chargers tacked on another long drive from the 5-yard line that took a little over 7 minutes off the clock, ending in a Hassan Haskins touchdown. Was the offensive production in quarterback Russell Wilson's first 2 starts an aberration? After consecutive 400-yard games, the Steelers' offense slowed in the comeback win against the Commanders. At halftime, the Steelers had 97 yards of offense, though they finished with 312. Wilson, 14 of 28 for 195 yards, 3 TDs, 1 INT, was inconsistent. And the deep ball that was so effective in Wilson's first 2 starts wasn't as accurate. Wilson was 2 of 7 for 40 yards with a touchdown and an interception on passes with 15-plus air yards until picking up 40 air yards on the fourth quarter touchdown to receiver Mike Williams, according to ESPN research. Describe the game in 2 words: near self-destruction. It started early with a failed fake punt from their own 16 in the first quarter, setting up the Commanders' first touchdown 3 plays later. Washington's offense continued to capitalize on Steelers' mistakes, including 3 costly penalties against cornerback Joey Porter Jr. then. Trailing by 6 and in spitting distance from the goal line in the fourth quarter, the Commanders recovered a fumble by running back Jaylen Warren. Most surprising performance: Williams. On his 9th snap as a Steeler after being acquired less than a week ago, Wilson scored the go-ahead touchdown. He caught a deep corner shot from Wilson with 2:27 to go in the fourth quarter. With the offense faltering, he showed in one play why the Steelers made the deadline move to pluck him from the Jets. Did quarterback Jaden Daniels have his first subpar game? Daniels, who entered the game as an MVP candidate, did not have his best game, completing 16 of 33 passes for 194 yards. Pittsburgh did a good job keeping him in the pocket by blitzing more than usual. The result: Daniels was not as accurate. He missed on 2 crucial throws in the second half, one that would have gained 20 to 30 yards and another that might have resulted in a 96-yard touchdown. He was wide on 1 pass and needed to put more air under the second one. Those throws made a big difference in the outcome. Describe the game in 2 words: gut punch. Washington proved quite a bit about itself Sunday, matching Pittsburgh all day. But it had too many wasted chances and blew a 10-point lead, turning what could have been a terrific win into a tough loss. The Commanders needed newly acquired cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, but he's dealing with a hamstring injury. Most surprising performance: right tackle Trent Scott. The former Steeler, starting for injured Andrew Wiley's shoulder, was not a problem despite facing linebacker TJ Watt most of the game. Washington provided Scott a lot of help, sometimes tight, and John Bates was responsible for blocking him. But he did better than anticipated. How can quarterback Drake may build off his first complete game win? When May threw an interception toward the end of the first quarter, he immediately put his hands on his helmet in disbelief. He was struggling at that point, seemingly not sure what he was seeing coverage-wise. So to respond to that adversity with a 10-play, 71-yard touchdown drive later in the quarter, and then a turnover-free second half, was impressive. May reportedly addressed the Patriots as a team this week because he felt practice wasn't as sharp as it needed to be, which shows he's evolving into a leadership role. Describe the game in 2 words, containing K.L.P. The Patriots totaled 9 sacks against first overall pick Caleb Williams and a mix-and-match offensive line. For a much-maligned defense, it was the best performance of the season. It was the most Williams was sacked since Week 2 against the Texans. Most surprising performance, run defense. The Bears were without key players along the offensive line, but that hasn't stopped opponents in recent weeks from running all over the Patriots. So for the Patriots to allow 3.6 yards per rush and hold their ground was a job well done. It allowed defensive coordinator DeMarcus Covington to scheme up some aggressive blitz calls in many passing situations. How do the Bears stop quarterback Caleb Williams' regression? Chicago's offense is broken, and Williams has looked worse in each of the Bears' 3 straight losses. His accuracy issues were already a problem as he entered Week 10 with the second highest off-target percentage in the NFL. And the issues caused by him holding onto the ball too long were evident in at least 2 of the sacks he took versus New England. This offensive approach is not tenable if the Bears want to develop a franchise quarterback. Chicago has gone 23 straight drives without scoring an offensive touchdown and averaged 2.6 yards per play. Describe the game in 2 words, depleted, defeated. The Bears were down 4 offensive linemen, including both starting tackles, before kickoff and lost left guard Tevin Jenkins to an in-game ankle injury. They failed to hold the pocket, which played a role in Williams taking 9 sacks. He's been sacked 18 times in 3 games. Defensively, the loss of nose tackle Andrew Billings' pectoral injury was clear by the Bears' lack of pressure on May. Biggest hole in the game plan. For as often as the Bears practice end-of-half situations, they've become one of the worst teams at the end of halves. The Patriots gained nearly 40 yards to kick a field goal in under 30 seconds before halftime. Chicago has allowed 300 yards in the final 30 seconds of a half this season, which is more than double any other team. The Colts rank second with 160. Even with running back Christian McCaffrey back, are the 49ers capable of a second-half surge? Whatever hopes the 49ers had McCaffrey's return would jolt them back to juggernaut status sure didn't show up Sunday. He had 107 scrimmage yards and should get better as the season progresses. But it's fair to believe this team lacks the extra gear that it's had in recent years. At 5-4, the 49ers remain in the mix in the middling NFC West, but the next 3 games, against Seattle, Green Bay, and Buffalo, will likely determine if there's any hope for a playoff push for this core. Either way, it doesn't figure to be easy. Describe the game in 2 words, continued malaise. The bye week was supposed to bring the 49ers renewed health and fresh legs, especially against a team coming off an overtime loss from the previous Monday. Instead, they looked like the weary team, getting pushed around by Tampa Bay in the second half. They continued to come up short and make mistakes in the red zone. Biggest hole in the game plan. There's at least one significant special teams miscue every week, and it continues to lessen San Francisco's margin for error. Kicker Jake Moody returned from an ankle injury, but he missed 44 49 and 50-yard field goals before making the game winner. And the unit also muffed a punt that led to Tampa Bay's first touchdown. Can the Bucs salvage their season after 4 straight losses? The Bucs have lacked a downfield passing threat the past 3 weeks, which is where receiver Mike Evans will come in when he returns from a hamstring injury. He told ESPN on Friday he expects to return after the Week 11 bye. The Bucs are 3-9 all-time without Evans since he was drafted in 2014. But he doesn't cure all. Without starting cornerback Jamal Dean, hamstring, Josh Hayes has surrendered touchdowns to George Kittle this week and DeAndre Hopkins last week. Week 13 against the Panthers would be the earliest Dean could come off injured reserve. Now they have to contend with injuries to left tackle Tristan Wirfs and cornerback Zion McCollum. Biggest hole in the game plan. The middle of the field continues to be a vulnerable spot for the defense, even as they try mixing in J.J. Russell for K.J. Britt at linebacker. Russell was on the field in zone coverage when quarterback Brock Purdy found rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall on a 46-yard touchdown. Purdy went 6 of 8 for 87 yards and a touchdown between the numbers in the first half. Eye-popping stat. Despite losing worse to what early indicators say is a sprained MCL, the Bucs averaged 4.6 yards per rush since he left the game, according to ESPN research. Offensive coordinator Liam Cohen pulled his offensive linemen, and they got some good blocking from their receivers and tight ends. They averaged 2.5 yards per rush today prior to Wirf's injury. Can Bills fix sloppiness with Chiefs headed to town? The Bills could have forced far more than the 4 takeaways the defense had against the Colts, something that is fixable moving forward. On offense, some of the miscommunications and drops can be explained by the injuries at wide receiver. But with Keon Coleman wrist possibly out against Kansas City, mixing things up in the running game and finding ways to maximize the communication between the available receivers and quarterback Josh Allen will be key. Biggest hole in the game plan: waiting too long to get the running game going. James Cook had 8 carries in the first half despite averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Straying from that put the Bills' offense in some tough situations, which was especially evident on first downs. Allen was 4 of 10 for 25 yards with 2 interceptions while passing on first down. Describe the game in 2 words: good enough. It wasn't the prettiest game the Bills have played, with the run defense issues highlighted yet again and offensive inconsistencies on display. But thanks to 10 early points off turnovers and late adjustments, it was enough for the Bills' best start to a season since 1993, 8-2. What's next at quarterback for the Colts? Coach Shane Steichen said he made the quarterback change from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco because it would give them the best chance to win. But now the Colts are 1-3 with Flacco starting, including 0-2 since the official change. Will Steichen reevaluate? Flacco threw 3 interceptions Sunday, surpassing his season total of 2 entering the game. While he completed 26 of 35 attempts for 272 yards, his 4 total turnovers, he added a lost fumble, played a big role in the Colts' largest margin of defeat this season. Biggest hole in the game plan: abandoning the run game. The Colts ran rampant over the Bills in the first half, with Jonathan Taylor rushing for 107 yards on 16 carries. Oddly, Taylor had 5 carries in the second half, and the Colts made few attempts to regain their early traction. This was the case in spite of the game being a one-score contest until 10-28 remained in the fourth quarter. Eye-popping stat. Flacco became the first player in the past 5 seasons to throw a pick-6 on his team's first offensive play of a game, joining Cleveland's Deshaun Watson in 2023. He is also the first player this season to throw an interception on each of his team's first 2 possessions of a game. Can the Saints keep the Darren Rizzi momentum going? The Saints had new energy around their facility after Rizzi was named interim coach, following Dennis Allen's firing on Monday. It won't be easy for them to dig out of a 3-7 hole, but beating a division rival was a start. The Saints need to figure out how to keep up that energy through their upcoming 3-game homestand. Early prediction for next week. The Saints get back-to-back wins for the first time since weeks 1 and 2 by beating the Browns next week. The Saints rebounded in a big way against the Falcons, and the 2-7 Browns have many problems of their own. New Orleans' confidence is likely back after snapping its losing streak, and it can potentially use that for another big performance at home next week. Describe the game in 2 words: stepping up. Without receivers Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, the Saints turned to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Kevin Austin Jr., and Dante Pettis. Valdes-Scantling, who was signed a few weeks ago, became the first Saints player since Brandon Cooks in 2016 to score 2 touchdowns and have more than 100 receiving yards and a half. How can the Falcons fix their first half woes? The Falcons have come out flat on several occasions in the first half, specifically struggling with time of possession. On Sunday, they had 26 yards of offense in the first quarter, and their defense made quarterback Derek Carr and receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling look like an elite tandem. Quarterback Kirk Cousins and defensive adjustments have bailed them out before, but it didn't happen in Week 10. Eye-popping stat. The Falcons' usually reliable kicker Young-Ho Koo went 1 of 4 on-field goal attempts, including one that was blocked and another tying kick that hit the post in the fourth quarter. He has made 70.8% of his field goals this season, which is his worst percentage since becoming the team's full-time kicker in 2020. Biggest hole in the game plan. The prevailing topic among Falcons defenders this past week was about stopping Saints running back Alvin Kamara. That was a goal that did not pan out. Kamara had 109 yards from scrimmage, including 5 receptions for 54 yards. What does this win mean for the Chiefs' number 1 seed hopes? With a victory against the Bills next week, the Chiefs can start making plans for how they will handle the first-round playoff bye that comes with the number 1 seed. By beating Buffalo, the Chiefs would be at least 3 games ahead of the Bills and all other AFC teams. It would take an epic collapse for them not to get the top playoff seed and the accompanying week of rest. Most surprising performance, the Chiefs' rushing attack, which was productive since running back Kareem Hunt arrived early in the season, gave the Chiefs little to work with. Hunt rushed for 35 yards on 14 carries. The Chiefs have been good in the red zone because they were running the ball well inside the 20. But they scored 1 touchdown on 4 red zone trips. Describe the game in 2 words: no mistakes. The Chiefs and their defense, which is based on getting pressure, couldn't force Denver rookie quarterback Bo Nix into any game-altering errors. They sacked Nix twice, but never took the ball away from him. Did the Broncos show they are serious contenders in the AFC playoff race? The Broncos' defense has consistently played at a playoff level, and their pressure on quarterback Patrick Mahomes was next level. The key will be the offense, which had 2 touchdown drives in its first 4 possessions and then couldn't match that gear the rest of the way. Rookie quarterback Bo Nix avoided turnovers and was effective on the final drive, but in the Broncos' quest to give him clean looks at coverages, they are consistently in a smaller menu of 3 wide receiver sets. When they diversify a bit, as they did more Sunday, they move the ball far more effectively. Most surprising performance, rookie running back Audric Estime. He had a season-high 14 carries Sunday as the Broncos' leading rusher. His previous high was 5, working mostly between the hash marks, where the Broncos have struggled to run. He showed he's an option the Broncos need in their run game, as he's quick to the hole and has the power to break tackles. Eye-popping stat. Sunday marked the first time the Broncos have ever sacked Mahomes more than 3 times in the 14 games they've faced him. They had 4 sacks before the end of the third quarter, and outside linebacker Nick Bonitto made life miserable for Chiefs backup left tackle Kingsley Swamataya. Did the Vikings defense bail out quarterback Sam Darnold? Yes, it most certainly did. While Darnold was throwing 3 interceptions, including 2 in the end zone, the defense held the Jaguars to 1 scoring drive and forced 3 fourth-quarter turnovers. Darnold will have some explaining to do after forcing the ball on all 3 interceptions to receiver Justin Jefferson and causing coach Kevin O'Connell to shift to the running game wherever possible in the 4th quarter. Describe the game in 2 words: clutch kicks. In his first NFL game, place kicker Parker Romo converted all 4 of his field goal attempts to account for all of the Vikings scoring. Romo replaced the injured Will Richard quadriceps last week, and the Vikings needed every one of his kicks Sunday. His longest came from 45 yards. Most surprising performance. The Vikings targeted blocking tight end Josh Oliver 6 times, tying his career high just 1 week after he was targeted on 5 passes. It has been an unexpected focus following the return of starter TJ Hawkinson, but Oliver has come through with catches on 9 of those targets. Is the Jaguars' offense broken? The Jaguars had 143 yards, the lowest under coach Doug Peterson, and quarterback Mac Jones committed 3 turnovers. They had 70 yards on their only touchdown drive and 73 the rest of the game. It's not the quarterback, because the Jaguars gained just 215 yards in a 28-23 loss at Philadelphia with Trevor Lawrence the week before. Injuries are an issue, as they're on their 3rd left guard and receiver Christian Kirk is out for the year with a broken collarbone. But they haven't found any kind of consistent rhythm in the past 2 weeks. Most surprising performance. The defense picked off Vikings quarterback Sam Darnold 3 times, the first time the defense has forced more than 2 turnovers in a game since Week 14 of 2023. They held Minnesota to 0 touchdowns in 5 red zone trips and kept the Jaguars in the game until Jones' 3 fourth-quarter turnovers. Biggest hole in the game plan. Receiver Brian Thomas Jr. didn't get his first target until 58 seconds remained in the 3rd quarter, and his first catch didn't come until 4:12 remained in the game. Thomas is dealing with a chest injury, and the Vikings had a safety over the top to account for his speed, so both were a factor in his quiet afternoon. But he needs to be more involved. Is quarterback Bryce Young proving worthy of the top pick in 2023? Hold on. He's beaten the beleaguered Saints and Giants in consecutive weeks. He didn't light it up Sunday, 15 of 25 for 126 yards, but he showed enough promise and poise. Coach Dave Canales didn't name a starter to face the Chiefs after the bye, but said, "Certainly Bryce made a great statement for himself today." Young has shown glimpses to suggest he can be a franchise quarterback, which is why Carolina didn't entertain trade offers despite calls before the deadline. Eye-popping stat. 3 days after getting a 4-year, $33 million extension, Running back Chuba Hubbard had a career-high 103 rushing yards after first contact on his way to a career-high 153 yards and a touchdown. It validated the toughness he has shown to warrant the new deal. Most surprising performance, the defense. It had its first shutout of any half since Week 15 of 2023. It had its first interception since Week 4, then another. It finally created pressure with OLB DJ Wonnum debuting. And it got an overtime fumble recovery to set up the win. The run defense was suspect, but the rest outweighed that. What kind of changes will the Giants make during the bye week? Something has to happen. They are 2-8 for the second straight season with 5 straight losses. A change at quarterback is the obvious choice, especially after coach Brian Daboll benched Daniel Jones 4 weeks ago. Jones has an injury guarantee in his contract that must be a factor down the stretch, and he's not playing well. He missed a wide-open Malik Neighbors on the opening drive and threw 2 costly interceptions deep in Carolina territory in the contest. It seems to be over after 6 years as the starter. Describe the game in 2 words: utter disaster. It's the same phrase used after a Week 1 loss to the Vikings, but it's still applicable, more so now. The Giants were shut out in the first half by the league's 32nd ranked defense, while many fans were eating their breakfast. They also couldn't stop the run again. One of the league's worst run defenses allowed Chuba Hubbard 153 yards on the ground. Eye-popping stat: 3 10-plus yard runs for Tyrone Tracy Jr. This is the 4th time in 6 starts that the rookie running back had at least 3 runs of 10 or more yards. He has added an explosiveness in the run game to the Giants' offense, starting ahead of Devin Singletary. Tracy finished with 103 yards rushing on 18 carries, but his final one resulted in the fumble that cost the Giants the game. For the most part, he's been a rare bright spot this season. Is Lamar Jackson playing his best football ever? Absolutely, and it's proved by stats and the way he's playing. In his past 2 games, Jackson has produced a perfect 158.3 passer rating in a win over the Broncos and a perfect passer rating in the 4th quarter of a comeback win over the Bengals. He is showing more poise in the passing game, throwing 24 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. A 2-time NFL MVP. Jackson is on pace to pass for a career-best 4,500 yards and rush for 900 yards. Eye-popping stat: wide receiver Tylan Wallace picked an opportune time to record his first career touchdown catch. With Baltimore down 21-14 in the 4th quarter, he took a short-out pass from Jackson and turned it into an 84-yard touchdown. He gained 78 yards after catch over expected, which is the second most YCOE on a reception since 2018, according to NFL Next Gen stats. Biggest hole in the game plan: failing to defend Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase. With T. Higgins inactive, the Ravens knew Joe Burrow would be targeting Chase even more and still couldn't slow him down. Chase scored on touchdown catches of 67 and 70 yards. For the season, Baltimore has now given up a league-high 28 completions of 25 or more yards, which explains why the Ravens have the 32nd ranked pass defense. What does this loss mean for the Bengals? It would have been great for the Bengals' playoff chances to win this game on the road. However, Cincinnati was a big underdog entering Thursday night, and the way the rest of the schedule shapes up, the contest against the Chargers and 2 matchups against the Pittsburgh Steelers were always going to be critical to their playoff chances, no matter what happened Thursday. Describe the game in 2 words: crushing collapse. The Bengals were in control and led by 14 points halfway through the 3rd quarter, but made enough mistakes that allowed the Ravens to roar back for a season sweep of Cincinnati. Biggest hole in the game plan: doing the little things right. A 3rd quarter fumble by Chase Brown and missed tackles that led to a long touchdown by Tylan Wallace were crucial. A missed interception by Cam Taylor-Britt and a crucial missed 4th down by Joe Burrow were among many mistakes.